Unaware his wife had just closed a 200 million business deal, husband abandons her in the delivery room to marry his ex. What she did next. He didn't just step out for a call. He walked out of a hospital delivery room, left his wife screaming in labor, silenced his ringing phone with her name on it, and chose in that moment to build a future with the ex he'd never really let go of. That night, Grace Miller lay in a dim hospital room, skin pale, body weak, cradling her newborn baby in her arms. The spot beside her bed, where her husband should have been, was empty. No flowers from him, no text, no hand to hold, only the echo of his last words. "I'll be right back." Hours earlier, she had rushed there from a meeting, still answering work emails between contractions, still worrying if she'd done enough for the project her whole career depended on. Her husband, Ethan, complained she cared more about code than him. Her only answer was a tired smile and a promise that once this baby arrived, things would calm down. He thought she was weak, distracted, easy to replace. He thought he was trading a simple wife for a brighter future with his glamorous ex, Chloe, the woman who told him she believed in his dreams. What he never knew was this. Before her water broke, just hours before he walked out, Grace had unknowingly sealed a $200 million deal. Her name sat on the contract as majority owner. Her company now controlled the very system his own business depended on. And while he would soon be slipping a wedding ring onto Chloe's finger, convinced he'd upgraded his life, Grace was opening an email that would change everything. Not just for her, but for him. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Grace's voice fade in that cold hospital room. When you click that button, you stand with every woman abandoned at her weakest who chose to rise in silence. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. The morning began with the sound of laughter, soft, genuine, and fleeting. It belonged to Grace Miller, 32, a woman whose warmth could steady even a storm. She moved around her kitchen in a loose t-shirt and leggings, one hand resting on her 38 weeks pregnant belly, the other whisking eggs in a glass bowl. Every movement was careful, practiced, efficient, as if she'd long ago learned how to carry weight that never showed on her face. Grace hadn't been born into comfort. She built it. Years earlier, she'd started a tiny app development company from this same kitchen table, her old laptop balanced between bottles and baby formula. Her father had died when she was 22, leaving her nothing but a dusty toolbox and a handwritten note. Build something that lasts longer than pain. The line lived in her like a second heartbeat. It pushed her through nights of red-eye coffee, client rejections, and code that crashed at 3 a.m. That little app company, Brightwave Technologies, had begun as a simple platform to help small shops track sales. Today, after years of grinding, it was on the verge of being acquired by a global tech firm for $200 million. The deal was technically scheduled to close the next morning, pending final signatures and automated confirmations. Grace had signed her last round of digital documents near midnight, curled next to her husband, Ethan Miller, 35, an accountant who loved to introduce himself as the man behind her success. He wasn't. Now Ethan sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling his phone, half listening, half existing. His thumb flicked past images of beach resorts, luxury watches, engagement rings. His expression held that familiar mix of boredom and quiet resentment. There was a time when he'd bragged about her in every room. Somewhere between her rising investor calls and his stalled promotions, admiration had curdled into envy. "Coffee's ready," Grace said, setting a mug beside him. "Extra cream, no sugar." She remembered his preferences even when he seemed to forget hers. He grunted, eyes still locked on the screen. Grace smiled anyway, hiding the sting. "You've got that meeting today with the finance firm, right? About refinancing the line of credit?" He exhaled sharply. "Yeah, trying to fix the mess your genius schedule made with our tax filings. You remember when we actually had time to talk before you became CEO of the universe?" Her hands paused barely. Then she forced a small laugh. "I'll take the blame for everything, as usual." The line wasn't sharp, it was tired. She'd learned that confronting him meant days of sulking and icy silence. She sat opposite him and flipped open her laptop. Her inbox was a storm: investor threads, legal documents, pitch follow-ups. In the middle of it all sat an email from her lawyer and closest friend, Linda. Subject: Final docs for tomorrow's close. Please sign before 11:59 p.m. Grace had signed those the night before. She hadn't scrolled down far enough to see Linda's second message. Subject: Protective clause reminder. In case anything ever happens with Ethan, your 61% control is locked in. Talk tomorrow if you want. That one remained unopened, buried under newer emails. Now another notification popped up at the top of the inbox. Subject: Brightwave closing window. Confirmation triggers at 9 a.m. Grace frowned at the time. That's earlier than we thought, she murmured, more to herself than to Ethan. Her phone buzzed. A new message from Linda. Everything's lined up. As soon as the global board signs from London, the acquisition auto-closes. You'll officially own 61% of the new entity. Try to rest today, okay? Grace exhaled slowly. She typed back halfway, then stopped. Something about all of it felt huge, almost unreal, like it belonged to some future version of her, not the exhausted woman still trying to remember if she'd paid the electric bill. She closed the message without sending a reply and looked at Ethan. You know, when this closes and I go on maternity leave, things will finally calm down, she said quietly. We'll have time again. For us. For the baby. Maybe even that trip you wanted. Ethan finally glanced up, his expression unreadable. After tomorrow, right? Yeah, she said, hopeful. After tomorrow, everything changes. For all of us. He leaned back and crossed his arms. We'll see. Silence settled between them, thicker than steam from the coffee pot. Grace rested her hand on her belly. Their baby kicked, a firm thud from inside. She smiled. She's restless, she whispered, just like her dad used to be. Ethan forced a small laugh, but his gaze had already fallen back to his phone. A notification pinged. Chloe, good luck with the bank today. I still think you deserve better clients. Coffee later? He tilted the phone, angling the screen away from Grace. She didn't see. Her attention slid back to her laptop. A dim bar, Ethan in a suit, staring at a spreadsheet of red numbers. His latest side business had crashed. He'd been reckless. She'd warned him. Grace had quietly wired her savings to bail him out, saving his credit and his reputation, stalling her own product launch by a full year. Later that same month, he'd met Chloe Harper, his old college flame, at a client event. Too much wine, too much nostalgia. Grace had forgiven the late-night text she found by accident. It was just emotional, he'd said. It won't happen again. She'd believed him. She'd wanted to. Back in the present, Grace closed her laptop with a soft click and tried again. You know, she said, voice gentler, I still remember when you used to bring me coffee at 2 a.m. and say you loved watching me build something from nothing. He didn't look up. People change, Grace. The words sliced through the morning air. She reached across and brushed a few crumbs off his sleeve. Well, I hope we don't. She stood and walked to the kitchen window. Sunlight slid across her face as she whispered, almost to herself, tomorrow will be better. It has to be. Behind her, Ethan's phone buzzed again. Chloe, I'll be near your office later. We really should talk before her deal goes through. He smirked, typed back quickly, then slipped the phone into his pocket. Grace turned, catching the tail end of that half-smile. What? Nothing, he said, finishing his coffee. Just business. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving behind the diminishing echo of his footsteps and the faint smell of burnt toast. Grace placed her hand on her belly and spoke softly to her unborn child. It's just a long day, sweetheart. Daddy's just tired. The camera lingered on her face, tired but kind, powerful but fragile, then slowly zoomed in on the laptop screen as it woke again. A new email sat at the top. Subject, Brightwave closing, London board signatures received, auto finalization in progress. And just below it, an older unread email from Chloe Harper, sent weeks earlier. Ethan, are you sure she doesn't suspect? Call me before she signs anything. Outside, a car engine started. Ethan's reflection flickered in the kitchen window as he checked his phone again. A calendar reminder blinked across the screen. Meet Chloe, office parking lot, 4 p.m. tomorrow. The scene opens on Ethan's white sedan, parked crookedly at the back of the lot. The sound of his heartbeat seems louder than the soft hum of the engine. He slams the car door shut, checking his watch. It's 3:56 p.m. His phone buzzes. Chloe, I'm outside. It's been a long time. He sees his reflection in the dark screen, hair perfectly styled, jaw clenched, eyes carrying a kind of hollow. He turns. A sleek silver car glides into view and pulls into the space opposite him. The door opens, and Chloe Harper, 33, steps out, elegant, composed. The kind of woman who always found the light in a room without trying. She walks toward him, heels clicking on asphalt. Ethan, she says softly, still punctual. I miss that. Her voice is the same, smooth, low, persuasive, the kind that could take a half-truth and make it sound like destiny. Ethan forces a smile. You shouldn't be here. I'm here for the coffee you promised, she says, leaning casually against her car. And for the truth you never said out loud. He glances back at the office building, an anonymous glass box with his company name, Miller Dynamics, etched in frosted letters on one side. Grace thinks I'm meeting a client. Chloe raises a brow. Technically, I run a consulting firm now. That's almost a client. Dim hotel bar. Ethan in a crumpled suit, swirling whiskey, staring at a balance sheet bleeding red. Chloe, fresh from a divorce, had walked in by chance. Or maybe not by chance. You look lost, she'd said. You always knew when I was falling apart, he'd replied. Later that night, a kiss in the parking garage. A text Grace would find months later. A fight. Tears. Ethan on his knees saying, it was a mistake. It won't happen again. Grace had stayed, but some scars don't fade. They just grow skin over them. Chloe studies his face now. How's your wife? He stiffens. She's, fine. She's due any day now. Any day now, Chloe repeats, weighing the words. And you're here. He looks away. You said you had something about Brightwave. Her expression sharpens. Business Chloe surfaces. I do, she says, pulling out a folder from her leather bag. Your wife's company is undervalued. The firm buying her out is getting a bargain, Ethan. They'll use her system architecture to lock competitors out, including you. Ethan frowns. I thought you were just doing strategy work. Since when are you tracking Grace's contracts? Chloe shrugs lightly. This industry is small. People talk. Some of those people pay me to listen. She flips open the folder, revealing printouts, market valuations, competitor lists, projections. I know what Brightwave is really worth, she whispers, and I know she kept her majority stake. 61% from what I've heard. Ethan swallows. Grace doesn't even read half of what her lawyer sends. She just signs and moves to the next thing. Exactly, Chloe says. She's brilliant with product, but emotionally, she lets the sentence hang. She trusts you. Silence stretches between them. You always wanted to be the man in front, Chloe presses. The one people called visionary, not the quiet husband in the background of her success photos. Ethan's jaw tightens. Flashback Grace's office 1 year ago. Grace stands in a small but bright office, exhausted but glowing. Her team claps as she signs a Series B term sheet. Ethan stands behind her, clapping slower, smile thin. A colleague jokes, behind every successful woman is a patient man. Laughter. Ethan's smile freezes, his nails digging into his palm in his pocket. Back to present. Chloe lowers her voice. I started a consulting firm that could use someone like you. I have clients, real money, but I need a partner who thinks bigger than spreadsheets. He scoffs, but it sounds more like a plea than a protest. And what? I just walk away? From Grace? From the baby? You told me last year it was already over, she says quietly. That you felt invisible. He flinches. He did say that once. Late, when he shouldn't have. I didn't say I'd leave her in the middle of everything, he mutters. Chloe steps closer. I'm not asking you to drop her in a hospital hallway, Ethan. I'm asking you to stop pretending you're not already gone. His phone buzzes. He looks down. Grace, don't forget the doctor's appointment tomorrow. It means a lot to me. He locks the screen without replying. Chloe watches his face carefully. Meet me tomorrow morning, before her papers fully close. We can talk through options, licensing, positioning. Maybe we save you from being cut out of your own future. There's a storm in his eyes. Duty, fear, ego, hunger. He nods just once. Tomorrow. She smiles, satisfied. Tomorrow, then. She gets back into her car. The engine purrs to life. She drives off slowly, leaving him in the golden light of a parking lot that suddenly feels colder. He finally opens his email, thumb shaking. A new message from Chloe. Subject. I know what Grace's company is worth. Let's talk before she realizes it. He stares at it, jaw tightening. Some promises don't break in one loud moment. The narrator's voice whispers over the scene. They start cracking days before anyone hears the sound. The hallway pulsed with movement. Nurses in scrubs, wheelchairs rolling, monitors beeping in overlapping rhythms. On a rolling bed, Grace gripped the side rails as another contraction racked her body. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her face was pale but focused, jaw clenched. Deep breaths, Grace, Nurse Marissa, mid-30s, calm and experienced, coached. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You're doing great, Grace gasped. Where's Ethan? He's in the waiting area, Marissa lied gently. He had been, 15 minutes ago. They wheeled Grace into the labor room. A wall-mounted monitor showed her contractions climbing into sharp peaks. The attending obstetrician, Dr. Hale, checked her progress. 7 centimeters, he said. You're moving fast. Baby's heart rate is good. Husband will be in any minute. Grace nodded weakly. He promised he'd be here this time. On a small side table, her phone buzzed. An automated notification from her email app flashed briefly. New message. Brightwave closing confirmation. 200 million acquisition completed. Nobody noticed. The screen went dark again. Ethan stood near the automatic doors, phone pressed to his ear. His leg bounced restlessly. On the screen. Chloe, incoming call. He hesitated, then answered, voice low. Chloe, now's not a good... I'm outside, or she blurted, her voice shaking. You weren't picking up. I had to come. Ethan's heart dropped. Outside where? The hospital, she said. You said we'd talk before everything becomes final, before she signs her life away, before you lose your chance. He exhaled, torn. Down the hallway behind him, a nurse wheeled a cart past, calling out, Where's the husband for Grace Miller? We're closing in on delivery. He turned, looking toward the corridor leading back to the labor ward. For a second, he saw Grace's face in his mind. Breathless, trusting. Chloe's voice cut through. If you don't come now, Ethan, there's no point talking about your future at all. Her deal just closed. My contact texted. London signed. It's done. He froze. What? She owns everything, Ethan, Chloe said urgently. Brightwave's IP, the core system Miller Dynamics built on. If we don't move now, she can shut you out with a single licensing decision. A beat. The monitors in the distance beeped. A newborn cried from some other room. A coffee machine whirred in the corner. Ethan's phone vibrated in his other hand. Call waiting. Unknown. Hospital ward. He ignored it. Chloe whispered, Come downstairs, 5 minutes, just talk. He looked back toward the corridor one last time. Then he whispered the sentence that would echo for the rest of his life. I'll be right back. And he walked out. The automatic doors slid shut behind him with a soft, final hiss. The air was cool, carrying the scent of impending rain. Chloe stood by her car, arms wrapped around herself. Makeup slightly smudged as if she'd been crying. When she saw him, relief flashed across her face. You came. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Grace is in active labor, Chloe. This has to be quick. I know, she said. That's why we don't have time to pretend anymore. She pulled a printout from her bag. This is a summary of the acquisition terms. My contact on the inside leaked it. She's the majority shareholder, Ethan. 61%. That means she can decide who gets licensed access to Brightwave's system. Your company runs on that architecture. If she says no, your investors walk. He stared at the page but didn't really see it. Grace would never do that. She's not vindictive. Chloe stepped closer. You told me she doesn't even know what she's sitting on yet, that she signs what her lawyer sends and moves on? So who's really in control of your future? Your wife or a board and a lawyer you've never met? His phone rang again. Hospital call. This time he looked at the screen. His thumb hovered. Chloe placed her hand over his. If you go back in there and just play the good husband, nothing changes. You'll still be the man in the background of her story. Inside, down the corridor, Grace cried out, "Ethan!" as another contraction hit. Marissa squeezed her hand. "Where is he?" Grace gasped. "He stepped out for a call," Marissa said. "He'll be right back." But outside, Ethan's phone stopped ringing. He silenced it and slid it into his pocket. "I just need to think," he muttered. "Then think with me," Chloe said. "Somewhere we don't have a clock ticking over your head." They got into her car. The engine started. Headlights cut through the gray afternoon. Grace's breathing turned shallow. Dr. Hale frowned at the monitor. "Her blood pressure's dropping," he said. "Let's keep her focused. Where's the husband? Call him again." Marissa hit redial on the charted contact labeled Spouse Ethan. The call went straight to voicemail. She swallowed, forced a professional smile, and gripped Grace's hand. "You're not alone, okay? We're right here. Breathe. For your baby." Grace's vision blurred. He said he wouldn't leave when it mattered. Another contraction tore through her. "Push, Grace!" Dr. Hale shouted. "You're almost there." The room erupted into focused chaos. Nurses moving in practiced rhythm, instruments clinking, the monitor beeping faster. Grace's world narrowed to pain, noise, and the empty space at her side where Ethan should have been. "Doctor, fetal heart rate dipping," a nurse called. Grace heard the words as if underwater. The edges of her vision darkened. "Stay with us, Grace," Marissa shouted. "Breathe!" Just as everything threatened to go black, one sound cut through it all. A baby's cry, sharp, clear, defiant. Grace's head fell back against the pillow, tears spilling down her cheeks. Then, darkness. In Chloe's car, Ethan stared at his silent phone as a new notification slid across the top of the screen. Email received, Brightwave closing, 200 million confirmed. He didn't open it. Fade out. The room was too quiet for what had just happened. Hours after the chaos of delivery, Grace lay propped against pillows, skin pale, eyes heavy. A faint IV line ran into her arm. The worst of the bleeding had been controlled, but the doctors had kept her sedated for a while to stabilize her. Now finally awake, she cradled her newborn daughter against her chest. The baby's tiny fingers curled around the edge of Grace's hospital gown, breathing slow and steady. Proof of life. Proof that something pure had survived the storm. Grace's voice came out hoarse. "Ethan!" Nurse Marissa stepped in, tired but smiling. "Hey, warrior, you scared us for a minute there." Grace blinked, trying to piece together fragments. "The baby, is she okay?" "She's perfect," Marissa said, adjusting the blanket. "Strong lungs, good weight. You did it." Grace swallowed, tears filling her eyes. "My husband, did he see her?" Marissa hesitated, just long enough for Grace to notice. "He stepped out during your labor," Marissa said carefully. "We tried calling him when things got complicated. His phone went straight to voicemail. He hasn't checked back in yet." "Stepped out," Grace repeated, the words hollow. She stared at the door for a long moment, as if his shadow might appear in the frame. "He said he'd be right back," she whispered. Marissa laid a gentle hand on her shoulder. "For now, focus on resting. You lost a lot of blood. Your body needs time to catch up with your heart." She tucked the blanket around Grace and her daughter, then quietly left the room, closing the door halfway. The silence grew heavier. Across the room, a bouquet of white roses sat on the small table, left by one of Grace's junior team members who'd rushed over earlier when Linda called. A sticky note with messy handwriting leaned against the vase. "From the Brightwave team, we're proud of you. Jenna & Co." White roses. Ethan used to bring those when they had nothing but hope and secondhand furniture. Now they felt like flowers at a funeral. Grace's gaze drifted to the bedside table. Her phone lay there, screen dark. She reached for it, her hand trembling. No missed calls from Ethan. No messages. She dialed his number slowly. The call rang once, twice, then jumped straight to voicemail. This mailbox is full and cannot accept new messages at this time. She tried again. Same result. Her chest tightened. She checked WhatsApp. A small message in gray under his name. You can't send messages to this contact. Blocked. The realization didn't hit like a loud crash. It landed like a quiet, suffocating weight. She put the phone down carefully as if it might shatter. Sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. Grace in lace, hands shaking, eyes shining. Ethan looking at her as if she were his whole world. I'll love you, he'd said, voice thick with emotion, even when you stop loving yourself. I'll be there on your best days and your worst. I'll never walk away when it matters. In this hospital room, the words felt like someone else's script. The baby whimpered softly. Grace rocked her gently, tears slipping down her cheeks onto her daughter's hair. It's okay, she whispered. Mommy's here. Mommy's not leaving. Her eyes fell on her open hospital bag on the chair. Her laptop, still inside, blinked faintly with a low-power light. A small instinct nudged her. Check it. Carefully, she moved the baby into the bedside crib, making sure the rails were up. She winced as she shifted, stitches pulling, muscles protesting. Then she shuffled to the chair and flipped open the laptop. The screen woke up. Email inbox. Hundreds of messages. Near the top, subject, Brightwave closing, acquisition completed. From Global Horizons Tech, legal. She clicked. Dear Grace, we are pleased to confirm that the acquisition of Brightwave Technologies has formally closed as of 9:02 a.m. local time. In accordance with the restructuring agreement dated 2020, you are recorded as holding 61% equity in the newly merged entity. Full transfer of funds, $200 million valuation, and updated IP registrations are in progress. Congratulations. Legal team, Global Horizons Tech. Grace stared at the screen. She reread the words 61% equity and $200 million 3 times, her brain working slower than her eyes. Her husband had walked out of the hospital, blocked her number, and disappeared. On the same day, she had become the controlling owner of the system his own company depended on. Slowly, a different kind of clarity began to form behind the fog of hurt. Another message from Linda waited just under the first. Subject, protective clause. Confirmed. Your 2020 clause is active. In case of marital separation or breach of trust, all decision-making power for Brightwave and its licensed IP remains solely with you. No spouse can sign or influence licensing agreements without your explicit written consent. Call me when you're able. Proud of you. L. Grace covered her mouth with her hand. He hadn't just left her. He'd walked away believing she was small, dependent, and easy to replace. Completely unaware she now held the legal power to reshape his entire financial world. Something in her chest shifted. The raw, open wound of abandonment began to cool into something sharper. Not hatred, not revenge. Clarity. Her phone buzzed. Text from Linda. I heard about the complications. I'm so sorry I couldn't get there sooner. Baby okay? Also, you're officially the majority owner of a $200 million company. Call when you can. Grace typed slowly, each word deliberate. Baby is okay. I'm okay. He left. Activate any protective steps we discussed. We'll talk details tomorrow. She hit send. That small click sounded louder than any scream. It was the sound of a woman shifting from survival to control. She looked at her sleeping daughter, then at the darkened window reflecting her own exhausted face. Her voice, still hoarse but steadier, filled the room. You walked out, Ethan, she whispered. But you just walked out of the only life raft you had. The camera moved to the window. Outside in the parking lot, a black car idled under the streetlight. Inside, Ethan sat behind the wheel, face ghost pale, watching the glowing windows of the maternity ward. His phone lay face down on the passenger seat, screen still lit with several missed calls from unknown hospital. He gripped the steering wheel, torn, but when a nurse walked past the entrance, he ducked down, as if ashamed to be seen. After a long minute, he put the car in drive and pulled away into the rain. Back inside, Grace's laptop dimmed, leaving only the faint glow of the deal confirmation email on screen as she whispered to her sleeping baby, "Tomorrow and they'll know what you're worth and what I've become." The faint blue light of dawn crept around the edges of the blinds. Grace sat half upright in bed, the room wrapped in a soft hush. Her daughter slept in the bassinet beside her, tiny chest rising and falling rhythmically. Every so often, the baby let out a small sigh that grounded Grace in the present. Her laptop was open on her lap, screen casting a pale glow over her tired face. She'd read the closing confirmation email. She'd read Linda's message about the protective clause. But now, with her mind a little clearer and the shock slightly dulled, she scrolled back further. An older thread from 2 years ago caught her eye. Subject, proposed betrayal clause. Your words, not mine. She clicked. Grace sat in a cramped but bright law office, a visibly pregnant belly under an oversized sweater. Linda, in glasses and a messy bun, spread legal papers across the desk. Most founders add standard prenuptial language, Linda said. Protects the company in case of divorce. Grace chewed her lip. I don't want anything that sounds like I'm planning to leave. Ethan would be crushed. Then don't call it a prenup, Linda replied. Call it what it is, a business continuity clause. If anything ever happens between you and Ethan, infidelity, separation, whatever, all decisions related to Brightwave revert to you alone. No shared signatures, no spousal interference. Grace had laughed weakly. A betrayal clause. Exactly, Linda said. You're not planning betrayal. You're planning to survive one. Grace had signed quietly, feeling foolish for even imagining something so dark. Now, in the hospital, she saw her own digital signature on the scanned documents. The clause was there. Precise, unemotional, ironclad. In the event of marital breakdown, abandonment during critical health events, or breach of trust impacting company safety, all rights, shares, and decision-making power for Brightwave Technologies and any associated IP remains solely with Grace L. Miller. Her fingers trembled as she traced the line with her eyes. Abandonment during critical health events. She looked at the empty chair beside her bed. He'd picked the worst possible day to walk out. Back in her inbox, the newest email blinked. Subject. Licensing implications. We should talk. From Linda. Grace opened it. With the clause active and the acquisition closed, you alone decide how Brightwave's system is licensed going forward. I know Ethan's company uses your architecture. We can choose to A. Continue licensing under strict commercial terms, or B. Let current contracts expire and redirect clients to safer partners. You're in control. No rush. Focus on healing first. Just wanted you to know. You're not powerless. L. Grace let out a shaky laugh that sounded half like a sob. Ethan hadn't just misjudged her value. He'd misread the board, the lawyers, the clause, the entire playing field. He thought she was the weakest piece. She was the board. She glanced at her baby. You're going to grow up seeing your mother as she is, she whispered, not as someone waiting to be chosen. She opened a new email to Linda. Subject, next steps. Hi L, thanks for everything. Activate all protective mechanisms related to abandonment and breach. Remove any administrative access Ethan still has to company accounts. I'm not ready to talk divorce yet, not while I'm still hooked up to IVs, but start drafting separation papers. Include a clause that keeps Brightwave and its IP completely off the table. We'll discuss licensing terms for Miller Dynamics once I'm discharged. G. She read it once, twice, then hit send. It felt like flipping a switch from shock to strategy. She leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion washing over her in waves, but underneath it now, a sturdy layer of resolve. Her phone buzzed suddenly. For a moment, her heart jumped, ridiculous hope flaring. I'll explain everything tomorrow. Don't make any big decisions yet. I just need time. No apology. No. How's the baby? No. Are you okay? Just control, even from a distance. Grace stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed a reply, slowly. She erased it, typed another, erased that one too. Finally, she put the phone down without responding. Her silence was her first answer. She turned her head and watched her daughter sleep, tiny fists tucked by her face. You and I, Grace murmured, will make our decisions on our timeline, not his. She reached over and gently closed the laptop. The screen went dark, leaving only the pale glow of the monitor by the crib. Outside the hospital, a black car parked under the streetlight again. Ethan sat inside, staring up at the building as if he could see through to her room. He dialed a number. Yeah, he said quietly into the phone. It's me. We need to move faster. If she realizes what she can do with those licenses, I'm finished. A pause. I don't care how it looks, he added. Just make sure tomorrow's meeting with the investors still happens. He hung up, gripping the steering wheel. He thinks, the narrator's voice whispered over the image, that tomorrow is still his to manage. The wind rolled in from the ocean, lifting flower petals from the aisle and scattering them like confetti the sea didn't ask for. Guests in white and champagne-colored outfits murmured politely as they took their seats. A small string quartet played something romantic and expensive-sounding. Phone cameras were already out, capturing every detail. At the altar stood Ethan Miller, thinner than before, eyes shadowed despite his immaculate white suit. Beside him, Chloe Harper adjusted her veil, every diamond on her gleaming like proof that she had won. At least, that's what she thought. The officiant smiled into the sunset. We are gathered here today to celebrate a new beginning. Ethan swallowed. His mind wasn't on the waves or the flowers. It was on a hospital room months earlier, Grace's pale face, her trembling hand searching for his. The first time he'd seen his daughter only came days later, when he'd asked for a photo through a mutual friend instead of walking into the ward. He told himself it was because Grace needed space. The truth was, he couldn't face what he'd done. Now he stood at another altar, trying to reframe his story as moving on. Chloe slipped her hand through his arm. You finally got what you deserve, she whispered. A fresh start, no more drama, no more poor me stories from your ex. Her voice was sweet, her grip was not. Ethan forced a smile. Yeah, a fresh start. But his eyes drifted to the small group of guests clustered with their phones out. Every time his name was whispered, Grace followed behind it like a shadow. A quiet office, early morning. Grace sat across from Linda, baby Hope sleeping in a carrier at her feet. Hope was a few months old now, chubbier, stronger, eyes bright when she was awake. Grace's face looked healthier than it had in the hospital, but still carried a fatigue that went deeper than sleep. Are you sure? Linda asked, sliding a set of papers across the desk. You can wait. There's no legal rush. Grace traced her finger over the top page. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Final decree. I saw their engagement photos, Grace said calmly. Beach, champagne, her ring in every frame. He's not coming back, not as a husband, and not as the man I thought I married. Linda nodded slowly. You know the clause already protects Brightwave. He can't touch the company. I know, Grace smiled faintly. This isn't about protecting the company anymore. It's about clearing the house. You really want these served on his wedding day? Grace thought for a long moment. Not to humiliate him, she said quietly, surprising even herself with the honesty. To make sure he understands it's done. No half-open doors, no, maybe later. Linda sighed. Okay, I'll have them delivered that morning. Grace signed the last page with a steady hand. Make sure, she added, that there's no way anyone can say I tried to use the divorce to squeeze his company. The protections were already there. Keep the asset language clean. Linda gave her a small, proud smile. You're playing fair in a game he stacked against you. Grace looked down at sleeping Hope. I'm not playing for him, she said. I'm playing for her. The officiant turned to Ethan. Do you, Ethan Miller, take Chloe Harper? A murmur rippled through the crowd. One of the ushers moved quickly up the aisle, whispering urgently to Chloe and handing her a phone. Her smile froze. What is it? The usher looked apologetic. Ma'am, it's trending. I thought you'd want to see. On the phone screen, a news notification glowed. Breaking. Tech founder Grace Miller confirmed as majority shareholder in $200 million Brightwave acquisition. Industry insiders call her the quiet architect of the future. Chloe's hand tightened around the phone. Grace? Miller? Ethan's stomach dropped. They went public already? He whispered. Chloe's eyes darted to him. You told me she'd sold and walked away with a modest payout. You said she didn't control anything anymore. I thought, Ethan started, but another voice cut in. Mr. Miller? A new arrival called out. Everyone turned. A courier in a slightly rumpled suit stood at the edge of the seating area, holding a large envelope. Delivery for Ethan Miller, he said, loud enough for all to hear. Ethan's heart pounded as he took it. The seal on the front read, Office of Linda Carver, Attorney at Law. He opened it with numb hands. Final decree of divorce in signed, filed, effective that morning. He flipped to the last page. Grace L. Miller, her signature steady. The date registered like a punch. Today. The paper slipped from his fingers, carried by the ocean breeze to land at Chloe's feet. She bent, grabbed them, scanned the lines. Her expression changed from confusion to fury. You told me you were waiting on her, she hissed, that she was dragging her feet, that she was clinging to you. Ethan shook his head, stunned. I didn't know she'd filed the final decree. Chloe jabbed a finger at the line about property. She didn't even ask for your company, Chloe spat. She didn't need it. Do you realize how that looks? She has the money, the majority, the respect. She let you keep the scraps, and now she's news while we're the footnote. The guests were whispering openly now, phones buzzing with the same headline. Ethan heard fragments. Isn't that the wife he left during labor? She's the Brightwave CEO? Wow, she dodged a bullet. Chloe straightened, her face a mask. You married me for a story you were telling yourself, she said quietly. The story where you were the man she lost. She stepped back, shaking her head. But you're just the man who lost her. She pulled off her ring and pressed it into his palm. The officiant stammered, Should we, take a moment or... Chloe turned away, walking down the aisle alone, cameras following, guests pretending not to gape. Ethan stood at the altar, holding a ring in one hand and divorce papers in the other, suddenly aware of how small he looked in front of the ocean. On a coastal road overlooking the resort, a dark sedan rolled slowly past. Inside, Grace sat in the back seat, dressed simply, no makeup except mascara. Hope, a few months old now, slept in a car seat beside her, a tiny hand resting against a soft blanket. Grace wasn't there to spy. Linda had mentioned the resort by accident when discussing service logistics. Grace had asked her driver to take the longer route home from a meeting. The car windows were tinted, her presence invisible. She glanced once toward the distant ceremony, a cluster of white and gold at the edge of the sea, and then back to Hope. Her voice, soft and reflective, played over the scene. Sometimes the loudest answer is silence, especially when the world is already watching. The car rolled on, leaving the chaos of the broken wedding behind. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Linda, you've been nominated for Innovator of the Year at the Women in Tech Gala. The industry is really starting to pay attention. Grace looked down at Hope and whispered, Good. I'd rather they remember what we built, not what we survived. Cameras flashed in rapid bursts as Grace Miller stepped out of a black car in a sleek silver gown. No dramatic train, no excessive jewelry, just clean lines and quiet confidence. Her hair was pinned back, leaving her face open and unhidden. A small pendant hung at her neck, the simple silver necklace Ethan had once given her early in their marriage. Tonight it looked different. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. Please welcome our Innovator of the Year, the architect behind Brightwave's groundbreaking platform, Grace Miller. Applause washed over her like a wave she now knew how to stand through. She walked the short red carpet, photographers calling, Grace, over here. Grace, how does it feel? Is it true your ex-husband's firm built on your system? That last question made a couple of handlers stiffen, but Grace only paused for a fraction of a second before giving a polite, neutral smile. The focus tonight, she said calmly, is on the women who build. Let's keep it there. She entered the ballroom, its high ceilings dripping crystal light. Banners celebrated women founders, coders, scientists. At her table sat Linda and two Brightwave executives. One seat remained empty. Hope's sitter had sent a picture. The baby had fallen asleep, clutching a stuffed whale, drooling slightly on its tail. Grace had saved the photo as her phone background. Across town, a TV glowed in a dim room. Ethan sat on the couch, sleeves rolled up, tie discarded, a half-finished whiskey on the table in front of him. Beside him, Chloe flicked through her phone, face tight. "Everyone's talking about her," Chloe snapped. "Innovator of the year. Quiet mastermind behind the code. They're posting her story like some fairy tale." On screen, the host praised Grace's resilience, her technical brilliance, her leadership through acquisition. Ethan stared, unable to look away. "She did work hard," he said quietly, almost to himself. Chloe shot him a look. "She left you with nothing." He didn't correct her. A part of him knew that wasn't true. She'd left him with exactly what he had earned. Grace took the stage to a standing ovation. The weight of the room's expectations settled around her, but instead of shrinking, she seemed to stand taller. She adjusted the microphone, took a breath. "I started Brightwave from my kitchen," she began. "I wrote code with one hand while holding a baby with the other. I took client calls from a bathroom because it was the only quiet place in a two-room apartment." Soft laughter, heads nodding. "I didn't build this company to prove anyone wrong," she continued. "I built it because I needed something to survive on that didn't depend on anyone else's mood, promotion, or approval." Her gaze swept the room. "Along the way, I made mistakes. I ignored red flags because I thought love meant patience. I downplayed my own instincts because it was easier to be nice than to insist on fairness." The room went quieter. "But here's what I learned," she said. "You're not difficult because you ask for respect. You're not ungrateful because you acknowledge your own work. And you are never replaceable in the story you wrote with your own hands." The applause started slowly, then swelled, people rising to their feet. In the front row, a journalist leaned over to another. "Isn't she the one whose husband left during her delivery?" The other nodded. "And now she's the one signing the licensing deals for half this city." On stage, Grace smiled. Not vindictive, not triumphant. Just free. He sat closer to the TV now, elbows on his knees. Chloe paced behind him. "If you'd listened to me, we would have pushed for a joint stake in her company before the deal closed. Instead, you tried to stand on your own, and now she's the headline and we're scrambling." "She was my own," Ethan murmured. "I didn't see it then." Chloe rolled her eyes and grabbed her purse. "If you're going to sit here and worship your ex-wife, I'm done for the night." The door slammed behind her. On the screen, Grace's acceptance photo lingered, a still shot of her smiling under falling confetti. Ethan's reflection overlay hers for a second. His voice shook. "She didn't need me," he said. "But I really did need her." A reporter caught Grace as she stepped off stage. "Mrs. Miller," he called. "One question. Do you have a message for those who underestimated or doubted you?" Grace paused. Behind the reporter, a large screen replayed a highlight reel of her journey. Code, boardrooms, the Brightwave logo. Most of them would never know that a hospital bed sat in the middle of that story. She looked straight into the nearest camera. "They already received it," she said softly. The cameras flashed again. As she walked away, her phone vibrated in her clutch. A notification popped up. "From Yuri Unknown. You think this is the ending? Check tomorrow's business section." Her expression tightened for a fraction of a second before smoothing again. She slipped the phone back into her bag. Her heels clicked across the marble. Steady, unhurried, grounding. At a nearby table, two executives whispered, "Did you hear? Miller Dynamics is on the brink. Their main licenses are under review. If she pulls the plug..." Grace didn't hear them, but she would see the headlines soon enough. The shouting started before the door fully swung shut. "Ethan, what is this?" An investor snapped, slamming a folder onto the desk so hard that pens rattled. 3 investors stood in front of him, suits wrinkled, tempers past polite. "We've lost 3 major clients in 2 weeks, another said. "They're all citing uncertainty around Brightwave licensing. You guaranteed us your ex-wife wouldn't interfere." Ethan stood behind his desk, shoulders slumped but still trying to appear controlled. "I told you," he said, voice strained. "We had a long-term licensing agreement. We built on the old Brightwave architecture years ago. I didn't think she'd change terms." "Well, she did," the first investor said. He jabbed a finger at the papers. higher fees, shorter terms, and a review clause that lets her redirect our clients to preferred implementation partners. Guess who those partners are? Not us. Ethan's throat went dry. We can negotiate. She's not unreasonable. Did she take your calls? The second investor asked flatly. Silence. Ethan glanced at his phone. His last few messages to Grace still showed as delivered. None read, none answered. One investor sighed, rubbing his temples. This is what happens when you build your company on someone else's foundation and assume they'll never move the ground. He closed the folder. We're pulling out, he said. We'll recover what we can during the asset sale. Ethan blinked. Asset sale? The investor looked at him like he'd missed a memo. The bank didn't tell you? He said. Your line of credit is frozen. Cash flows upside down. Receivables dropped with those clients. He straightened his tie. Miller Dynamics is circling the drain, Ethan. We're just making sure we're not in the water with you. They walked out, leaving the office feeling twice as empty. Seconds later, the door burst open again. Chloe stormed in, designer bag slung over her shoulder, eyes blazing. The bank called me, she snapped. They froze our personal account too, the joint one. They said your company is flagged under high risk of insolvency. Care to explain? Ethan sank into his chair. He suddenly looked older than his years. It's temporary, he said, more out of habit than belief. Once we stabilize. Stabilize what? Chloe cut in. The investors are leaving. The clients are gone. Your ex-wife owns the system this company runs on. And we have a mortgage that assumes you're not a financial disaster. He winced. Chloe, you left your wife in a hospital, she said, each word sharp, because you didn't want to be the man standing slightly behind her. She gestured around the office. Half-packed boxes, overdue notices tucked under reports. Well, she added, you're not behind her now. You're beneath her. The words hung in the air like smoke. Ethan stared at his hands. I thought she'd fall apart without me. I thought she'd need my help to handle the acquisition, the money, the board. And instead, she locked you out of the thing you assumed you could always use, Chloe said. Her voice wasn't even angry anymore. Just tired. You didn't marry a safety net, Ethan. You married the person building the whole structure. She pulled off her ring and placed it on the desk next to the scattered invoices. I didn't sign up to be married to a man stuck in his own self-pity, she said. I signed up for the version of you who could at least see straight. Call me when you remember who that is. She left. The ring rolled slightly before settling. The office hummed with the low sound of overworked computers and distant printers. Outside the window, the city looked dim, almost indifferent. Ethan opened his laptop. Emails piled up in red-marked threads. One subject line stood out. Notice of intent to terminate license. Miller Dynamics. He clicked. As part of our risk management process, and following recent events affecting Miller Dynamics, Brightwave Technologies will not be renewing the existing license beyond the current term. Clients relying on your implementation will be offered migration support to other certified partners. Brightwave Legal. He leaned back, eyes burning. She hadn't shut him down out of spite. She'd written it like any standard risk memo. That somehow hurt more. His screen pinged again. A news alert popped up in the corner. Breaking, Brightwave quietly acquires distressed assets of former competitor Miller Dynamics. A photo accompanied the headline, stock image of glass buildings, captioned with both company names. Somewhere in the article, his name would appear as former CEO. Grace's name would be majority shareholder acquiring entity. He whispered into the empty room, "You win, Grace." But there was no satisfaction in it, just an exhausted truth. He pulled open a desk drawer and took out a small photo frame. Grace and Ethan on their wedding day, sunny afternoon, ocean behind them, eyes full of a future they'd both imagined differently. His phone buzzed on the desk. A new message from Grace Miller. He hesitated before opening it. "We need to talk. Brightwave will be reviewing what happens to your former clients and employees. My assistant will schedule a time. This is business, Ethan. That's all." The phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the floor. Outside his window, rain began to fall, tapping against the glass. A security guard walking by down below glanced up at the building. Funny thing about storms, he muttered. They always come back to the same place they started. The glass doors flew open with more force than necessary. Ethan Miller strode into the lobby, his suit slightly rumpled, tie knotted too tightly, eyes burning with a cocktail of shame and anger. The receptionist, Amelia, looked up from her screen, startled. "Good morning, sir. Do you have an appointment?" "I need to see Grace Miller," Ethan said, breath short. "Right now." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller's calendar is—" "Tell her," he snapped, hand slamming against the counter. "It's Ethan." Two security guards shifted slightly behind him, not aggressive, just ready. One of them, Daniel, mid-40s, broad-shouldered and calm, stepped forward. "Sir, we just need you to lower your voice. I'll ask up to see if she's available." Ethan exhaled harshly, stepping back a little. "Fine." Daniel pressed a discreet button, speaking quietly into his earpiece. Upstairs, in a glass-walled office, Grace stood overlooking the city. She listened as her assistant relayed the message. "He's downstairs," the assistant said. "He seems upset." Grace's jaw tightened for a second, then relaxed. "I'll come down," she said. "No need to bring him up." She smoothed the sleeve of her tailored blazer, checked that the photo frame on her desk, Hope smiling, cheeks round, was angled upright, then walked to the elevator. The elevator doors opened into the lobby with a soft chime. Conversations dulled. Amelia fixed her posture. Daniel straightened. Grace stepped out, composed in a white suit that contrasted sharply with Ethan's frayed edges. She approached him with measured steps. No rush, no flinch. "Ethan," she said, "you shouldn't be here without a scheduled meeting. This is a place of work." The formal distance in her voice hit him harder than any insult. He swallowed. "Was this your plan all along?" Grace frowned slightly. "My plan? To build a company on tech you knew I'd need?" He shot back. "Then take everything when I made one mistake?" Grace blinked, astonished, and then almost laughed, though there was no humor in it. "One mistake?" she repeated quietly. An employee passing by pretended to check their phone, ears clearly open. "You abandoned me during childbirth, Ethan," she said. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried. "You blocked my number while I was still hooked up to machines. You proposed to someone else while I was learning how to walk down a hospital corridor again without passing out." His shoulders drooped. "I know," he said hoarsely. "I know I was wrong, but you destroyed my company." "No," she said. "I protected mine." She nodded lightly toward the glass walls, toward the floors above them. "When your company became a risk to my clients and my team because you were leveraging my architecture without stability, I did my job as Brightwave's majority owner," she continued. "The fact that you were my ex-husband didn't change the math." He looked around, as if realizing for the first time that this was her building, her name on the plaque, her staff waiting nearby for her signal. "You can't tell me none of this is personal," he whispered. "You bought my company, Grace." "I bought its assets," she corrected, "so your employees wouldn't be collateral damage in a mess they didn't make." That stopped him. She nodded toward Daniel, the guard. "We offered every impacted engineer and staff member a position here or a severance package. I made sure of that personally." "So you're the hero now?" he said hollowly. "No," she replied. "I'm a responsible CEO." For a moment, the buzzing phones and clicking keyboards faded. It was just the two of them again, like the kitchen years ago, only with titles and consequences between them. "I loved you," he said quietly. "Whatever you think of me now, I did." Grace's gaze softened just a fraction. "I know you loved the version of me that needed saving," she said. "I'm not that woman anymore." He flinched. "You built this whole thing without telling me," he said. "You protected yourself from me years before I did anything. You didn't trust me." Her expression shifted. "No," she said. "I trusted you with my heart. That was my mistake. I never trusted you with my company. That was my wisdom." She turned slightly, revealing the framed photo of Hope through the glass wall of her office upstairs. "For Hope, my reason," the engraving under the photo said. Ethan followed her gaze. His breath caught. "She looks like you," he murmured. Grace's eyes softened briefly. She has your stubborn chin, she said, but she will not grow up thinking love means staying where you are not honored. Silence. I didn't come here for a fight, she added. My message said we talk about your former staff and clients. That offer still stands. Professionally. He looked at her, really looked, and saw what he hadn't seen before. Not a wife waiting to be chosen, but a leader who'd built something that would outlast both of them. And personally, he asked, one last flicker of hope in his voice. Personally, she said gently, this is the last time we speak without lawyers or intermediaries present. She stepped back, giving Daniel a small nod. It's okay. Ethan's shoulders slumped. I never thought you'd be the one to win, he said, almost to himself. Grace considered him for a moment. I never thought, she replied quietly, you'd be the one to walk away from what we already had. She turned toward the elevator. As the doors slid open, Ethan's phone buzzed. A notification from his bank. Foreclosure proceedings confirmed. Personal property and remaining holdings will be reviewed for liquidation. The color drained from his face. Grace stepped into the elevator without looking back. The doors closed on the image of him standing alone in the middle of her lobby. In the polished reflection of the glass, Ethan saw his own face, tired, smaller than he remembered, and whispered, if she thinks this is over, she's wrong. But even he sounded unconvinced. A small analog clock ticked softly on the living room wall. Outside, the wind moved through the trees in slow, unhurried waves. Inside, Grace sat on the edge of a small bed in a softly lit nursery. The walls were painted a muted seafoam, shelves lined with children's books and a few framed photos. In the crib, Hope, now around 9 months old, lay on her back, clutching a stuffed whale, eyes half closed. Grace read from a worn storybook, voice low and steady. And when the storm finally moved past, she read, the garden didn't look exactly the same, but the roots were deeper, the flowers grew stronger, and nothing that was meant to stay had been lost. She closed the book gently and smiled. It's not a very subtle metaphor, is it? She murmured to Hope. Hope gurgled softly, kicking one foot. The camera panned slowly over the room. On one shelf, the Innovator of the Year plaque from the gala. Next to it, a framed photo of Grace on stage, holding the award, Hope in her arms, both of them smiling. And beside that, a smaller frame with an older photo, Grace and Ethan in their early days, laughing over takeout boxes on the floor of an unfurnished apartment. Grace glanced at the old photo for a long moment. She didn't turn it face down. She simply nodded once, as if acknowledging a chapter that had ended and done its job. They say success is the best revenge. Her voice came in soft voiceover. But honestly, peace is better. She set the storybook on a small table and reached down to tuck the blanket around Hope. You're the best thing I ever built, she whispered. Hope's tiny hand patted her arm in sleepy approval. Grace stood and moved to the window. The city lights glittered in the distance, not as a threat anymore, but as context. Somewhere out there, people were working late in Brightwave offices she now led. Somewhere, lines of code she'd once written half asleep were still running, still serving. On the windowsill, her phone buzzed. A text from Linda. Everything's finalized. All your assets and properties are secure. Foreclosure on Ethan's holdings completed tonight. No legal ties left. You're officially clear. Grace exhaled slowly, shoulders lowering in a visible release. No smile, no gloating, just relief. She locked the screen and set the phone face down. Some victories didn't need applause. She turned off the main light, leaving only the soft glow of the nightlight in the corner. The gentle hum of the baby monitor replaced the room's previous silence. Grace leaned over the crib one last time. You'll grow up knowing your worth, she said softly. You'll never have to beg anyone to see it. Not if I can help it. She kissed Hope's forehead. We're free now. Outside, parked across the street under a dim streetlight, a car idled quietly. Inside sat Ethan, alone, staring at the warm light coming from Grace's windows. The foreclosure letter lay folded on the passenger seat beside him. He could see her silhouette pass by the window, carrying what looked like a mug, moving from the nursery to the living room. He couldn't see her face, only the calmness of her movements. Tears pooled in his eyes. I thought she needed me, he whispered into the empty car. But maybe I just needed her. He watched as the last lamp inside turned off, leaving only the soft glow of the nightlight in the nursery window. He didn't get out. He didn't knock. He knew he no longer had that right. After a moment, he put the car in drive and pulled away, disappearing into the night. As the camera lingered on the peaceful house, Grace's voice returned one last time, calm and certain. He left a woman he thought was weak. The truth is, she just hadn't started yet. The faint sound of Hope's sleepy babble blended slowly into the sound of soft ocean waves, steady, endless, unconcerned. The final frame showed Grace's home office desk. Her laptop screen glowed with a new email. Subject, International Expansion Proposal. Europe. We'd love to discuss bringing Brightwave's platform overseas. Your story has inspired our team. The cursor blinked at the end of a half-typed reply. Let's talk. Fade out. Silence. Not a revenge story. A beginning.